It's no secret that the cast of Rainbow Reflections is diverse, and this is especially true when it comes to being queer. Most of the world in Rainbow Reflections recognizes 3 to 4 genders: male, female, non-binary, and gender fluid, which is sometimes just labeled under non-binary. Intersex and transgender people are also widely recognized and accepted. We'll be taking a closer look at sex and gender in this second video. Hyoktu is intersex, a fact that's brought up in Book 3, yet something that he had known about to some extent growing up. In his home, there were only male and female, and intersex wasn't something that people were really aware of. He therefore grew up as male, but his gender identity definitely fluctuated. He would sometimes dress feminine in order to protest the gender roles at his home, though he never identified as female. He felt more like an in-between gender, or non-binary, or just non-conforming in general. It's not until he leaves his home that he discovers these are actual genders that exist in most of the world, but at this point he feels it's too late for him to take on these labels. And labels aren't really something he's a fan of, as he just wants to be himself. Later on, when Zin discovers Hyoktu's semi-gender fluidity, Zin asks if they can call their father by they-them pronouns instead. Hyoktu instantly agrees, feeling that gender fluidity returning to him. However, he still wouldn't really label himself as one thing or another, not particularly caring to at this point anyway. Zin grew up with a female body, and though they said they were a girl at age 4, they never felt like that label fit them. They had mostly just copied their twin when Ren declared she was a girl, as it's common practice in Gaily on much of the world to let the child decide their gender instead of forcing it onto them. By the time Zin hit puberty, they definitely weren't comfortable in a female body, desiring a male or intersex body instead. In Book 1, when they realized what was amiss and how they hated their body, their father brought them to see a doctor to get them a hormonal blocking potion to reverse puberty. During this time, Zin began questioning their gender identity, not just their body sex. After all, there's been many female people who would get on hormones or get surgery done to give them a masculine or intersex body while still identifying as female. But this wasn't the case for Zin. They tried out he/him pronouns for a bit, but that didn't feel right. By the end of Book 1, they start using they/them pronouns and identifying as non-binary, as they felt more like the in-between gender. Ren grew up believing that she was a girl, and that was that. Yet by Book 3, she notices that her body still has yet to develop in the way that a female body should, which is hinted at in Book 1. She realizes that she's intersex, which dismays her a lot. She questions her gender briefly, wondering if she must be non-binary to match her intersex, as that was what was natural, and Ren wants to be as natural as she can. Yet after speaking to her father and rediscovering that he is also intersex, Ren realized that she could still identify as a girl. She still wants to be natural though, and refuses to get on hormones or have surgery done in order to make her more feminine. Sorella was born female, though there were a few times where I considered making her male to female transgender. However, I decided against this, mostly because I didn't want to make Sorella's strength come from the fact that she was biologically male. She is therefore female in sex and gender identity. She was never one to question her gender, feeling aligned with her birth sex. Jabali was born male and identified as male. This was easy for him, growing up in a region where only male and female existed. He had a bit of awareness to non-binary and intersex people, and transgender people were definitely common, but he never questioned his gender himself. C3 was born intersex but identifies as male. This was mostly due to his 3 parents being more feminine or non-binary, and he wanted to have his own identity separate from them. He may later identify as non-binary, but we'll see. Mint was also born intersex, and this made them confused on what their gender should be, especially as they felt like any gender on any given day. They became gender fluid from an early age, wearing a different colored bracelet for their genders to tell others how they were identifying that day. Green for non-binary, blue for female, and purple for male. As the series progresses, they're going to drop the male gender, feeling more feminine and non-binary. There's a good chance they'll drop the non-binary gender too, choosing to identify only as female by the end. Keokat is a spirit, meaning they are fluid sex. Fluid sex beings are able to change their sexual organs at will by being male, female, intersex, or discarding other sex entirely. Keokat's decided sex is unknown, though it's likely they don't have any sexual organs. As for gender, most spirits would be termed as agender or having no gender, as spirits tend not to have a grasp for gender. Yet Keokat, being immersed in the physical realm, eventually felt a sense of gender and chose non-binary to describe himself. Though they mostly use they/them pronouns, and that's how most people would refer to them as, they will accept any pronouns. Khurshid was born male and identified as such his whole life. Fern is fluid sex, being a spirit. She mostly maintains an intersex body though, not wanting her body to appear too feminine. She definitely felt feminine though, and therefore chose to be female when she went to the physical realm and heard about the concepts of gender. Aster, much like Fern, is fluid sex and chose to have a male body when going to the physical realm. He tends to be more on the feminine side, though he definitely believes his gender is male through and through. Luriel was born female and never questioned her gender identity. Wave was born male and never questioned his gender identity, especially as the area he grew up mostly had male and female genders. While non-binary, intersex, and transgender people existed, they weren't often seen. He never felt a need to change his gender. The Rainbow Wizard is fluid sex, appearing more male. Though he doesn't have a gender or any concept of gender, he seems to be on the gender fluid side, at least to everyone but himself. Most people use he/him pronouns for him, though he definitely accepts they/them pronouns that are more aligned with having no gender. He really doesn't care what pronouns are used. Master Hanmu is fluid sex, being a spirit, but grew up as male. In a society where only male and female existed, he had to choose which he'd be. He never questioned his gender though. There is definitely more to biological sex than meets the eye, and gender identity can be tough to figure out. Thanks for sticking around to discover more about the Rainbow Reflections cast this Pride Month.